Salam Sejahtera. My name is Clarina Rehat. I'm the presenter for the paper entitled The Moderating Effect of Motivation in the Relationship Between Experience and Cultural Tourism Participation, a study in Politeknik Metro Betong Sarawak. And together writing this paper with me is my colleague, Mr. Budi bin Sharifuddin, and we are both from Politeknik Metro Betong Sarawak. So, the presentation for today will be based on the following outline, where it begins with the introduction and ends with the discussion, limitation, recommendation, as well as the conclusion. So, as we can see here in the slide, the term cultural tourism is only being widely used since 2017, where it was first introduced in the assembly session of the United Nations World Tourism Organization in Chengdu, China. So it is clearly defined by the United Nations Tourism Organization 2018 that cultural tourism covers tourism activity that involves tourists to acquire knowledge, explore, experience, and consume the tangible and intangible cultural attraction or product in a tourism destination. And according to Islamic Tourism Center 2021, human desires to discover and grasp understanding about cultural identities in different regions of the world has become one of the pillars of the tourism business in Malaysia. And speaking of Malaysia, according to official page of Malaysia Tourism Center, it is a country that has a long tradition of tourism and attraction, that it has actually a beautiful culture, art, architecture, handicraft, music, and dance. Whereas Sarawak, a country in Malaysia, is has its own unique history, vibrant culture, tradition, and belief uh, that will making Sarawak a place worth to be discovered. So, uh, now we are looking into the problem statement. According to Technavio 2022, the research has reported that the affordability due to growth of employment increased the desire to partake in the cultural tourism to break mundane lifestyle, and increasing in mental health issue are among the forecasted key drivers that influence the growth of cultural tourism. And according to World Tourism Organization 2020, tourism is the sector that uses the cultural resources to enhance the traveler experience. And even though the previous researchers has explored the area of visitor participation, cultural exchange, life experience and devotion, digital transformation, and tourism and tourist experience, virtual and augmented realities, just to name a few, but little is understood about the elements that make up the entire cultural travel experience, despite the fact that for many countries, cultural tourism represents a significant part of the overall tourism sector. So now, therefore, by addressing this gap in the literature, our study could help to increase understanding of how cultural tourism can be promoted and sustained over time. However, while experience can be a key factor in driving cultural tourism participation, the motivational factors can have a notable impact on how experience influence the engagement in cultural tourism. Additionally, academic research can provide useful references for scholars, tourism, and travel related services provider, and the education sector. And here you can see is the pen here is the research objectives as well as the research question, and there are three of them in which we will be looking into the relationship between the experience, tourism participation, as well as the motivation. There are three variables here. Okay, and now uh, in this theoretical framework, you can see clearly that the moderating variable is the motivation factor itself, where independent and dependent variable is explained by the experience and cultural tourism participation respectively. Thus, there are three hypotheses here. So, by acknowledging the fact that different people have different travel motivation will consequently affect their choice and consumption with travel, it is useful also for tourism destination marketers. And understanding these motivational factors can be important for policymakers as well. Besides, this will also give an insight to the industry practitioner to relook into their current mechanism in handling tourists so that both tourists will get the maximum experience and travel related service provider will be able to cater to their specific needs that will lead to the positive economic generation impact and generation as a whole. So you can see here in chapter 2 we will be exploring the this chapter into three. The first one is experience. So the previous researcher has written surround the area of the human culture, the technology, as well as how the participation can actually improve and bring effects to the tourist experience and contentment, as well as on how perception, authenticity, involvement, cultural interchange, gastronomic allure, and service excellence also contribute to the same matter. And motivation, on the other hand, is actually, for example, the prior experience and how it has actually impacted the choice of activities and destination. Whereas we also need to note that demographic background, emotion, satisfaction, previous experience, and intention has also bring and become the motivation underlying the tourist intention. And motive as well, we have to understand that it affects tourist behavior on to go to exploring as well as participating in specific cultural activities. And the last one, cultural tourism participation, is include entertainment, relaxation, novelty, and escape in addition to learning. And destination is an essential factor that shape the authenticity and cultural tourism experience. However, it was argued by Soldatenko and Becker that exposing the culture of indigenous people is either bring benefits or harm to the participating tribe involved. However, they suggested that effective communication could be bridging the gap in cultural differences. So here we are looking at the methodology. All right, this is a descriptive research study, and we have used dual language self-administered structured questionnaire, and the respondents are of academic staff, administration staff, as well as the students of PMBS. While Craigie and Morgan has stated that with a population of 238, we can actually get a minimum of 148 respondents. But fortunately, we have managed to collect 179 respondents for this particular study. And it was collected between the first to the third week of April 2023 using Google Form and disseminated via WhatsApp group. And considering the context and the understanding of this cultural tourism, 12 respondents were used in the pilot study where it consisted of students of diploma in tourism management that soon will be completed their studies after their 3 months practical training. So as you can see here, the a reliability test was conducted and all Cronbach alpha values are well above zero point 0.7. Thus, all items are considered reliable to be used for the entire study. So, for the finding analysis, we have successfully analyzed all the profile of the responding according to various item, which is gender, age, marital status, race, as well as occupation. And now the overall mean score is basically is of a good value, and with experience with mean 4.39, with standard deviation 0.625, motivation 4.39 with standard deviation 0.635, and cultural tourism participation with mean 4.01 with standard deviation of 0.769, sorry. And then hypothesis testing, we are using linear regression for hypothesis 1 and hypothesis 2. So as you can see here, the first hypothesis, the correlation coefficient R equals to 0.668 indicate a moderate positive correlation between experience and cultural tourism participation. And the correlation is statistically significant by referring to this value here. And for the second hypothesis, also using linear regression analysis, we are actually looking into testing the relationship between motivation and cultural tourism participation with correlation coefficient value of R.69F 695 sorry 695, and the correlation is deemed as statistically significant, then hypothesis 2 is supported. And the last one, hypothesis 3, we are actually looking at the table here where we are using hierarchical regression analysis. And the table here illustrated that 51.7% R square equivalent to 0.517 of the variance in cultural tourism participation were collectively explained by both motivation and cultural by both motivation and experience. Meanwhile, the remaining 48.3% can be explained by other variables that are not being discussed in this study. Thus, motivation moderates the relationship between experience and cultural tourism participation, and this supporting hypothesis 3. So here, the discussion here, we are actually based on what we have learned in the previous chapter. It is actually hypothesis 1 has a linear correlation between uh, experience with cultural participation. And then the finding also in line with Kerry, where it says that opportunities and atmosphere provided for the tourists encourage them to engage with tourism activities, that tourists co-creating engagement during their visit and involved in an attraction. And Williams et al. Stated that engagement can be created when both visitors and service providers are on site. Whereas the H2, on the other hand, uh, based on the presented result, there is a linear correlation between motivation and CTP. Therefore, according to the previous researcher, Sahin 2020, every individual has different motivation to travel, that curiosity, interest, and sense of discovery peak during travel. That both cultural difference and travel motivation can influence the participation of an individual in an event. That co-creation among people while on vacation is influenced by personal advantage, economic, hedonic, learning benefit regarding communality, and benefit regarding building reputation. The third hypothesis, on the other hand, if you look at it, the data collected from respondents was analyzed using hierarchical regression analysis. Based on the presented result, it can be seen that motivation is collectively explained by both experience and cultural tourism participation, where Cavache, Franco et al. Stated that tourism establishment need to improve its product and services in order to engage as well as to build satisfaction and loyalty among tourists to boost their revisit intention. And it is worth noted that Smith et al. Has mentioned escapism and entertainment have grown increasingly important in cultural tourist experiences. However, contrary to this, Douglas et al. Mentioned that escapism and entertainment factors had little effect on tourist propensity to partake in cultural tourism activities. The researchers argue the willingness to participate in cultural tourism activities does not dictate by social status and the need for recognition. It is more about experiencing, unwinding, and learning about the local culture. So definitely, this research is not without limitation, as this study only focuses on respondents from PMBS only, and as it is also conducted among local respondents, it might not be a good predictor toward the cultural tourism participation. So further studies may consider to explore motivation of cultural tourism participants from different cultural and demographic background, for example, because understanding motives across different demographic variables would enable tourism and travel related service provider to target a particular group of cultural enthusiasts. And further researchers actually should consider to extend a similar survey to the international tourists. And the result computed through regression analysis also suggested to look into factors beyond experience and motivation factors, which is referring to the hypothesis 3, such as social influence and peer recommendation, just to name a few. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the conclusion, as mentioned by International Labour Organization, digitalization, demographic changes, globalization, and climate change are causing quick changes in the tourism industry and the jobs that are available in it. And needless to mention how the global pandemic has hit us hard, then it is no doubt that this study will help to shed some light in the related field in general and specifically the industry players. And therefore, market research becomes essential to understand the profile of target markets, specifically the factors that dictate their participation in activities related to cultural tourism. So that's all for me. Thank you for listening.